Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. My name's Tracy Hendren, and I'm from the National Practitioner Support Service. And with me today, I've got my colleagues Dawn Hazel. Say hello, Dawn.
Hello.
And Rich Baker. Say hello, Rich.
Hiya.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the presentation in the normal style for those of you that have been on one of our webinars before. We have presentation slides that we share with you, and we can also share with you the webinar video afterwards. And then at the about halfway through, we're then going to go to a live demo where we can actually show you building a report. So just as a reminder, our webinars are free. We don't charge for the webinars. You can book them through the NPSS website. And they're open to all our current, new and potential customers. Today's webinar is on reporting, so it is relevant to our current customers. We have got over 70 attendees with us today, so lots of people very interested in finding out a little bit more about the report, and I'm hoping you'll be too. What you will have at the bottom of your screen is the ability to ask questions through the chat facility. Now, because we've got over 70 people on the webinar, we will answer questions as we go, but unfortunately we're probably not going to get to all questions simply because of the amount of delegates that we've got this afternoon. So what we've tried to do within the presentation is preempt what your questions might be. So hopefully as we go through, we'll answer the questions that you've got. If we don't get to your question, don't panic, because what we do at the end of the webinar is we collate all of the questions that are asked, we provide the answers, and then we share them with all delegates. So today what we're going to look at is the overview of the reporting function in PRA. So currently YRBI version 1. We're going to talk to you and show you reports in YRBI version 2, because that's what we're going to be using moving forward. Rich and Dawn are then going to show you how to actually build a report. And we're going to finish with some top tips, so just some bits and pieces that we think would be useful for you when you're building your own reports. And then finally, obviously, we're finished with a Q&A, and if there's anything that we haven't covered and we've got time, we'll cover it on the webinar. If we haven't, we'll pick it up in the email that we send back to you with all questions covered. So just as a reminder for how the functions currently work, the YRBI software is built within Housing Jigsaw, so you can actually run the reports directly from PRA. And we're talking Housing Jigsaw because obviously as we move forward, our housing register and our allocation system will also have YRBI 2 as part of the functionality. You have the ability to run and build reports. You've got the ability to schedule reports and to have them emailed. You can create your own dashboards, and you can convert data into charts and pivots. So YRBI 1 was our first reporting function that we went live with very early on this year. But we recognised that it didn't pick up all of the functionality that was required for a very busy frontline local authority service needing to answer FOIs and other wider council member questions, etc. So we're now building YRBI 2. This will be supported by a full user guide, which will include step-by-step guides to building each of these reports, and they'll be produced by NPSS in conjunction with HPL. So we will test it as the customer to check that it's working, what it is that you've got to do on a step-by-step basis, and then we'll share that with you when YRBI 2 is released. The user guides will include step-by-step instructions with screenshots. For those of you that know us, we like pictures, so the more screenshots and pictures that we can get into a guide, the better. Rich is smiling now. And we'll provide you with some examples of formulas. And again, the top tips that Dawn's put together for the presentation today will also add into the guidance and anything else that we come across as we go through. So we're really going to try and do it from a practitioner's point of view, so from a practitioner to a practitioner. We've listened to you and your feedback and compiled the feedback to ensure that YRBI 2 covers the wider wider elements that you're going to need as a local authority or partner agency when you're running reports. It's going to be released by the end of this year, and I'm going to explain as we go through the reason why that it's almost ready to be released now, but there's a couple of things that we want to try and incorporate within the release. And the first one is the guidance that's coming out from CLG around reports that they would like local authorities to be able to use at a benchmarking level. So we would like to be able to pop that report in before we release it to you. And obviously we need to wait for MHCLG to be clear as to what fields they are for us to be able to build it. And the second one is that what we'd like to do is when we release YRBI 2, we can put some template reports in for you. But if we release it and then we look to add template reports, we will have to add them to each and every single user, i.e. local authority. So we'd have to write them over 70 times for you all to have a copy of ones that we write for you. So it makes more sense for us to write them up front, and then once we release YRBI 2, they'll be within all of your systems. So to help us with confirming which reports we should write, which ones you would find most useful, what we'd like you to do as part of the chat today is, or follow it up with an email if it's easier, but it would need to be in effect, within the next week or two, to let us know what you would find to be the top report that you would like us to write for you. And then what we'd do is we'll collate the top 5 of those, and we'll add at least those 5 into the YRBI 2 before we release it. So just to be clear, what we're looking for is your top 5 requested reports. So what is it that you would like as a local authority for us to do for you? And what we need from that is the detail. So one of the things that we've found when we've been using YRBI 1 and YRBI 2 is actually local authority will say, oh, I would like to know what households are in TA at the end of the quarter. Well, that's fine. But what we're going to need from you is a little bit more detail as to what you actually mean around the households in TA at the end of the quarter. So an example would be if that was one of your top reports, if that's the report that you want us to build for you, what we would need from you is, hi Housing Jigsaw, can you please build for us a temporary accommodation including the length of stay and what type of TA, and can you please include these fields into the template report? The case ID, the customer ID, the case, created date, the start of the temporary accommodation and the end of the temporary accommodation placement, the amount of days that the customer is in temporary accommodation, and under what duty is this accommodation placement provided for. So if you give us all of that information, when we write the report, you'll have everything you need. If you just say, I'd like to know how many are within the prevention duty, we won't know what additional information you need on your customers and on timelines and on the approach, unless you make it really clear what field you want to see within that template report. So just to recap, if you can chat us or send us an email before next Friday, send it to housingjigsaw@mpsservice.org.uk. We will collate them all. We'll rank them in for those of you that are saying which ones is your top report, and we'll definitely build the first 5. And I'm saying we because it won't be me. It will either be Dawn or more likely it will be Rich, who's the expert on reports and is loving being here this afternoon. So what we're going to talk you through as part of the live demo that Rich and Dawn are going to be doing as a bit of a double act for us is how each local authority, how to build a report. And one of the things that you're going to need when you're looking at this is every local authority received a configuration spreadsheet as part of the implementation process. So if you remember, you got a spreadsheet that told you what questions are in prior, which ones you'd like, which ones you wouldn't like, what else you'd like from them. But what that will also show you is the location of the question within the system and whether the response is required for H-click. So when you're looking at building your report, actually to know where the questions are and to know what the code is for those questions. So on column Q of that configuration spreadsheet, and if you've lost it or haven't got it anymore, or somebody else had it and configured the system and you'd like a copy of it, again, when you email us or chat us, let us know that and we can resend it to you. On column Q, you will find the code that will be needed when you're writing your reports. So this is a really easy way of making sure that you get the code right and you add it in the right place, and to assist you with ensuring that the reports cover the detail that you're looking for. And as I said, they can be copied and pasted directly into the report builder. I feel like I'm sounding quite knowledgeable, and actually what I'm really doing is reading off the slides from what Dawn's put together. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is pass across to Dawn, and she's going to show you how to build a report.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. So as Tracy mentioned, we're going to run through with you quickly this afternoon how to build a report. So the report example that we're going to build for you is to build a report which lists the number of cases where the household has pets and a medical condition that have been placed into temporary accommodation at some point. So I've loaded up on the screen for you YRB version 2. So we are operating within YRB version 2 to show you how you can build a report within that function. So as we've seen, we've loaded YRB version 2. If you go into the builder, you'll need to select the app and report type. So I'm going to select test version 2, and we're looking at housing Jigsaw. So the first thing that we need in order to build this report is the case ID. So this is the case ID reference against the case. So if you select cases, simply click case ID. Then what you can do whenever you're building a report, and this is a really useful tool, is that as you're building it, you can preview the way that the report will look for you. And you can do this as you move through the report. So we'll do this several times throughout today's presentation so that you can see as I'm building this report. So if I click preview, this is simply going to give me a list of all of the case IDs against cases that I've been working with as a local authority. So the very first stage in building a report. So as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at asking whether or not looking at building a report where the household has pets and a medical condition. So those two questions. So the next thing that we need to do is to add in case data items. So what this does is where Tracy was referring to earlier within our configuration spreadsheet is allows us to search for outcomes on any of the questions asked within Housing Jigsaw. So by adding case data items, that's adding a field that allows us to add the question that we're going to ask. By adding in case data response, it includes the response to that question. So in order to do that, you go to case data items, you add question map code, so that's the question that we're going to ask, and the corresponding response, so answer text. So at this stage, if we refer to our configuration spreadsheet, I want to find out how many people how many people have health issues. So if you search within this spreadsheet, and you search for health, you'll see here, it's got, has the person got any health issues? That's what I'm wanting to find out. Those people in temporary accommodation who have health issues and have pets. So that's my question, and I'm happy as to where that is within the system itself. So if I follow the spreadsheet over and move to column Q, that will give me the map code. That's the code within the system that will allow me to ask the report builder to bring that information through. So if you copy that question, go into criteria.
Whilst Dawn is doing that, we have had a question saying we can't see the spreadsheet. Dawn isn't showing the spreadsheet because obviously she knows what the codes are. Do you just want to explain that, Dawn?
Yeah, so I can show you that. So if I flip to the spreadsheet itself. So within the spreadsheet, I've looked for the question. So is there any health issues? If I scroll over to column Q, that's the corresponding code. So click copy. And then if I go back into Yerby, and just show you. So the criteria that we're putting against that question, click create, is the response equal to, and then that's the question we're going to be asking the system. If you add that to the table.
And we've just got a brilliant thank you. So well done, Dawn. Really well explained.
And again, at this stage, have a look at what you're building. So click the preview button. So you'll see here, I've got the case IDs. I've got the question that we've searched on, which obviously is, does this person have any health issues? And in the right-hand column, the answers of yes or no. So at this stage, we want to do a little bit of housekeeping to make sure that the responses look clean. So I'll show you quickly how to do that, because in effect, we don't need to see this question, the question in the middle column. We know that's the question that we're asking. So I'll just show you how we tidy that up a little bit. So if I close this screen, I'm going to hide the question and then amend this column. So this is asking, does this customer have health issues? And then if we preview that, you'll see we've got a nice easy column, case ID on the left-hand side, and does the customer have any health issues on the right-hand side? And that can be used for any question using that process of copying the question code using the configuration spreadsheet. So I'm just going to run you through that again. So what we've got so far is the case ID. And against that case ID, does that customer have health issues? We also want to know whether or not that customer has got pets. So we can add in another case ID item, case data item, sorry. So in order to do that, if we close down case data items 1, add in case data items 2. Again, we're going to ask a question map code and the corresponding response, so the answer text. So I will remember this time to flip to the spreadsheet so that you can have a look at it as I go through. So I'm going to load up my configuration spreadsheet. So I know I want to ask a question regarding pets. So if you search, control and find, put in the question or the word pets, you'll see it's taken me to the assessment page. And within the assessment, we're actually asking our customer, does the household have any pets? So if you follow this spreadsheet, go over to column Q. That's giving you the coding within the system itself. If you copy that coding, control and C. And then if you flip back to Yerby, go to case data items 2.
We've just had a question come through asking about filtering the answer for health issues. The short answer is yes, and we'll show you how to do that later on in this demonstration.
So the question was, can you get it to only show clients that do have health issues? So rather than our yes, no, Dawn, what they're wanting to do is, can we just show it those that have answered yes?
Yeah, so at the moment we're pulling through all of the data and then we can apply filters in different ways. So the 2 ways that you can do that, we can do that through Yerby itself by applying that filtering through Yerby. Or for those of you that are more confident in Excel, they may be familiar with this sort and filter through Excel. You can download the information into Excel and then apply that filter in that way. And we're going to show you how to do both shortly. So just to go back to the question, so again, we're adding, so just to reflect back, we're adding in the second question, does our customer have pets? We've copied the code for the question code from the spreadsheet, and we're now applying that. So, and is equal to the question that we're asking. If you add that to the table, at this stage, simply close this screen. Have a preview of it. So have a look at what you've built so far.
There's a preview button there, isn't there?
There is, and that's quite critical, to be fair. When building these reports, once you've made a change, preview the report, make sure it's behaving as you need, because especially when you start playing with formulas and you become really confident with the tool, it's easier just to see how it's going rather than having to go back many steps.
We've just had another question. Where is the configuration spreadsheet found? So just as a reminder, everybody that is a user of PRA, a customer of PRA, would have been sent the configuration spreadsheet once you signed up. That would have allowed you to determine which questions you want, which questions you don't want, and many other areas of the configuration. If you haven't got a copy of it, not to worry, just let us know and we can resend that spreadsheet to you. I have already had 2 or 3 people on the call already asking for it, so anyone that needs it, just pop it in the chat and we'll send it to you. And we've already had multiple requests for your top 5 reports with some very comprehensive fields required within them. So fantastic news, we're starting to get some really good reports through. And another question that's come up is whether you'll still be able to see your Yearby 1 reports when we move to Yearby 2. Absolutely, yes, you'll still retain your Yearby 1 reports, but we'll talk you through that as we go through the presentation, how that works in relation to the Yearby 2 ones.
Okay, so just to show you what we've built so far, we have the case IDs, we have all cases and the answer to the question, does the customer have health issues? And we've added in the question now, does the household have pets? So again, we're just going to clean this up a little bit so that it looks very clear within the response. So the question we've asked, does the customer have pets? And we don't need to see the question map code because we're seeing the responses in the right-hand column. So to preview this, we've now got a spreadsheet showing very clearly all of our cases, the response to the question health issues and the response to the question pets.
We've had a question, how many questions can you have within a report? So for a basic report, you can have 5. You can do a more complex report, but obviously you need to be a bit more of an advanced user. So for us, I think at this stage, 5 questions within a report.
That's correct.
So we now need to include the information as to whether or not this is a customer that has been placed into temporary accommodation, because that's what we're looking at this stage. So in order to do that, if we close down case data items, go into cases, you'll see a long list here of information that you're able to include within that report. We want to know, of these households, which ones have been placed into temporary accommodation, because at the moment, this is telling us everybody who's approached and whether or not they have health issues or don't have health issues, whether or not they do or don't have pets. But we want to drill down to look at just those cases where they've been placed into temporary accommodation. So in order to do that, we're going to add in the first temporary accommodation date. So if we click on this button here, that will add in, as you see here, the first temporary accommodation start date. Now, in this, what we want to do is make sure that there is information reported in that field. And in order to do that, we include a criteria. So if I click on criteria and click create, we want to include here the criteria that it is not null. So in effect, this is going to remove all records where there is not a temporary accommodation start date to give us those households that have been placed into temporary accommodation.
Thanks, Dawn. And that answers a question that we've had on what happens in the report if a question has not been completed in Jigsaw. So that's the same thing, Dawn, isn't it?
So if you put the criteria and is not null, that's going to remove anything where there is no response to that answer. So if I add that to the table, close that down, and preview the response. As you'll now see, I've got a list of households with the details as to whether or not they have health issues, whether or not they have pets, and whether or not they've been placed into temporary accommodation. So at this stage, you could do two things. We can insert further criteria within YERBI to show you just those with health issues and pets, or you may find it easier working from Excel. So if you've got to this stage and you're thinking it may be easier for you to work from Excel, what you could do at this stage is to save the report. So in order to save the report, this button here at the top right-hand corner, if you click Save, give the report a report name, webinar report, save against the relevant person, click Next, and you can set up a variety of folders within this, should you like, to help you to work through by clicking Add Folder. I'm just going to save it within this folder. And then if you go to your library, this is where you've saved reports that you've built, or reports, as Tracy said, that we're going to make sure are inbuilt within the system when we release YERBI version 2. So you'll see here, we've got the webinar report. You've got different functionality within the library itself. As Tracy mentioned earlier, you can schedule reports, share them, edit them, copy them. So if you have a report that's already built, but you want to change some of the parameters, you can do it through this function.
And I'll just add a little point on that. It's a really top tip to save the reports in My Library, because that is a folder that's just dedicated to you as an individual. And then if you want other people within your organisation to see that, I would then copy that report into the public library, which means anybody in your organisation has access to that. The reason why you would keep a copy in My Library is if somebody else then went into your public library and changed that report or accidentally deleted it, you still got the original, and it's a 2-second job to copy it over rather than spending 10-15 minutes rebuilding the report.
So I've just run this report, and if we wanted to export it to Excel, you could at this stage print the report. If there was information in it that would be suitable to be displayed within a chart, you could create a chart at this stage, or you can click Export. And as you can see, this will export this information to Excel.
We've been asked whether you can delete a folder from the library once it's created, and absolutely yes, the answer is you can delete any folders that you create within the library.
So then if you click Next on Excel, you'll see it downloads really quickly. And if you click that button, it will have downloaded that information very simply into Microsoft Excel for you. Just going to change screen so that you can see that with me. So as you'll see, we've got a list of all of the cases where this customer has been placed into temporary accommodation. Do they have health issues? And those of you familiar with using Excel, at this stage, you would then be able to filter. So if you only wanted to see those where they have got health issues, you could then filter through Excel. But you can also do that within YERBI. So if I close the Excel spreadsheet down,
Back up to the top.
bear with us, we've just lost the screen share.
Whilst Dawn's doing that, Joy from Cornwall, yes, you've asked about YERBI 1. At the moment in YERBI 1, there is only the ability to add one question at a time, which is one of the reasons why we're obviously releasing YERBI 2, to make it far more comprehensive for you.
So that's how you'd load one of the preloaded reports. If, however, you wanted to amend that so that you put the filters in at that stage, then you would go back in, edit that report, just loading.
Just as a reminder, when we resend you the configuration spreadsheet, what we'll have to do is send you the one that you've configured for your local authority, because otherwise you'd be looking at fields that your officers obviously haven't added any data to because you've hidden them. So what we will need to do is to go back through and find your particular spreadsheet and then resend it to you.
So if we wanted to put in a criteria so that we only see those households with health issues and with pets, you can apply a criteria through Yerby if you didn't want to do that through Excel. So if you hit criteria, create a criteria, and you're going to say, okay, I only want answers that are equal to yes. This person has got health issues. This person has got pets. So your filter is and is equal to yes, and add that to your table.
And just something to mention on there as well is it's not case sensitive, which means it doesn't need to all be in lowercase or uppercase or even
Yeah.
correct case. Just try and make it a bit easier for you.
So we could preview that at this stage. So you'll see in the middle column, does this customer have health issues? I'm only seeing those cases where that person does have health issues. So if I wanted to just see cases where somebody has health issues and they have pets, just to show you again, if we go into the pets question, apply the criteria, create the criteria. So we're wanting to show the responses equal to yes, add that to the table, close that down and preview it. I now have a report that shows me cases where somebody's been placed into temporary accommodation, where they have health issues and where they have pets.
Thank you, Dawn. That was a really comprehensive overview of how the reporting will work in Yerby 2. I hope we've answered all of your questions as we've gone through. And as a reminder, we will send you your individual configuration spreadsheets. In year 1 of having PRA, you get 2 bites of the cherry. So if this has made you think about some of the things that you want to report on that maybe you're not asking, or some of the questions that you've got that you're not using, this is also your opportunity to do that if you haven't already changed your configuration twice this year. So I'm just going to go back to the presentation, she says confidently. So now what we've done is provided you with an example of building a report. I hope you found that really useful. And I think, Dawn, you wrote yourself two pages of notes, didn't you, to enable you to do that today. And prior to that, you wouldn't have been in a position to have built a report through Yerby 2.
No, so we'll make sure they're included very clear and concisely when we send out the user guide. So they've included screenshots, etc.
And I think it just goes to show that, you know, as practitioners, this is something that we are able to learn and to be able to do ourselves as we go through this process. So as and when Yerby 2 is up and running, you will be able to, through the user guides that we send to you, be able to run and create your own reports.
Yeah, so that's...
So just a couple of top tips to go through with you. Remember, the data recorded under the HRA is more complex than the simplistic P1E data. So before building, you need to be really clear on what exactly you want to report on. And we've had lots of examples of local authorities asking us for reports, but not really giving us the fields that they're looking for, or taking into account the fact that a case will go through the prevention duty, the relief duty, and then on to the main duty. So I think one of the things that is a challenge for us is the fact that we're no longer comparing apples with apples from last year. Actually, what we're now doing is our KPIs are going to have to change to allow us to be able to report against prevention activity, relief activity, and main duty. So just think about the reports that you're going to want to be building moving forward.
We've actually just had a question be asked, and the question is, are the reports solely or looking at H-click, or can one be created for clients by caseworker, and in which stage they're in? That report is already included within YERB 1, within the preloaded reports, and it can be built or pulled off. And I think the key with this is to explain that when YERB 2 goes live, any of the questions that are asked within the system can be reported on. So it allows you to report on much wider than just H-click. You can look at recording or reporting trends, key performance indicators, and as Tracy said, your freedom of information requests.
That's a good point. There's a common misconception with this tool that you can only report on H-click. H-click obviously is outside of the system. With the reporting tool, you can report on things like reviews, on actions, on decisions, on notes, on meetings. Obviously, the list goes on and on with what's coming in version 2. So it's a lot wider and it's a lot more in depth than H-click.
We've had a question around when does your configuration year start? So it starts when your contract started. So when you started purchasing PRA, that would have been for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So within year 1 of that contract, you get 2 bites of the cherry because this was new to all of us. And knowing what exactly we wanted to record and how we wanted to record it, I think we've all learned as we've gone along. So it's within the first year of your contract. You then get the opportunity to reconfigure every year. So you get 1 bite every single year. So it's not the end of the world if you've already had your 2. As soon as we get to the end of year 1, you'll be able to do it again. MHCLG are releasing KPIs in December based upon their research. As long as the data is captured in Jigsaw, we will look to produce a template report. So if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I said that there was a couple of things we wanted to embed into YERB 2 before we released it. This was the second. So the first one is those top 5 reports that you would like to see. And if we can build more, we will. So it will depend on the time we have and how nice Rich is on the day. And secondly, if MHCLG release the KPIs in December, early December, we will add that report in as well for you. We've seen some really good examples of local authorities working together in groups to establish benchmarking networks.
Yeah, so I think it's important to recognise that as local authorities, we want to understand the legislation and how we're working and how we're operating. So some local authorities coming together in groups to look at how they can set up key reports within their systems so that they're able to benchmark against each other. And I think that's a really interesting or important thing to do moving forward. So do talk to some of your colleagues about how they're setting up reports to allow you to benchmark moving forward.
I think that's a really important point because we do want to know how we're faring, how well we're getting on. But just to remind you, that is within your gift. We won't do that for you. You need to be working in groups of local authorities and agree to share that data. So local authority A would agree a report. They would share the report with local authority B, C, and D, and then they would share the results that they're producing from their own local authority. So this is your opportunity to be able to benchmark against one another. You will obviously also be able to benchmark against one another with the new STAR, which is the customer satisfaction survey that will pick up mandatory fields across the homelessness legislation to ask the customer how they feel, what sort of service they feel that they've had, and those questions again, if you're happy to share them with your wider PRA neighbours, we'll be able to facilitate that for you. Dawn's already talked you through if you're more confident working Excel and shown you how you can download the data into Excel and then drill down to the more specific information needed or filter the information through Excel. So again, it's just to have a play with it and see how it works.
So
we both took an intake of breath there, so we both thought the other was going to speak, and neither of us did.
So I think this is quite an interesting top tip. What you'll recognise is that under H-click, the information that we're used to recording under P1E, which is our reasons for approach, isn't recorded under H-click. That field is now known as reasons for loss of last settled accommodation. And inbuilt within Housing Jigsaw is a free text box that records the reasons for approach. Now, we've had local authorities contact us who say that actually it would be quite useful to be able to build a report based on a list of reasons for approach. This is something which you can include within Housing Jigsaw once you've determined the drop-down list of reasons for approach. So you would need to liaise with your implementation manager. And once that's included, that will then allow you to report against that drop-down list of information. And we've had other examples of local authorities wanting to record other information. So, for example, an area where there is a heavy armed forces area, and they're looking at information being gathered specifically in relation to armed forces. By adding in a question relating to the armed forces with a drop-down menu, it allows that local authority to report clearly and concisely against that information. So just to remind you to have a think about if there is information that you would like to report against, you would need to speak to your implementation manager as part of that configuration.
And you should all be having conversations with your implementation manager at the moment around how things are going, anything else we can do to support you within your first year of PRA. So hopefully you've either just had that conversation and you've got the contact to be able to email them, or you've got an appointment booked in or being booked in within the next few weeks. And we do have a drop down that Rich has already built around reasons for approach. So we're happy to share that with you if you are then looking to benchmark with neighbours. Obviously, if you're using the same drop down list, you're able to benchmark against the same information.
So this is just a top tip, really. Within the where you're building a report, you have the ability to use a prompt facility. So when you're adding the date that, for example, a case was created, against that, if you have the criteria, if you put add and is between, and then in that between box, you have, and I'm just going to try and circle with the mouse, you have prompt for value. If you tick that prompt for value, whenever you run a report, it will allow you to state the dates that you want that report to be specified against. So that's really good where you're having to look over a specific time frame or you're looking at specific quarters. It means that the report will automatically trigger a response to ask you, okay, I'm going to run this report for you, but what dates do you want me to report it for you over? So using that prompt facility will allow you to report over any given time frame. And we know some of the really interesting freedom of information requests that we get give us different time frames or over certain dates. So it allows you really to drill down to that information over specific time frames. And we'll make sure that when you get a copy of these presentation slides, that's included, and it's also included within the new manual.
So we had a question earlier about Yerby 1 and will you still have the reports that you've painstakingly built within Yerby 1? Yes, you will still have your Yerby 1 reports. They will still be accessible to you as a local authority or partner agency. However, you cannot migrate the Yerby 1 reports into version 2. If you wanted them in Yerby version 2, you would need to rebuild them in Yerby version 2. You cannot add any objects from Yerby 2 reports into Yerby 1, so it's an enhancement. So Yerby 2 you can do more on, but what it won't stop you doing is using the reports that you've already got within Yerby 1. The reason that we're building Yerby 2 is that it has almost 3 times the amount of objects than Yerby 1. So objects being tables and fields that you can report on. So Yerby 1 will still be there. You can still absolutely use it, but what you can't do is move those reports into Yerby 2. You'd have to rebuild them if you wanted them in Yerby 2. I hope that's clear. I felt like I said Yerby quite a lot there.
You did.
So we've asked questions as we've gone, so hopefully we've picked up most of your questions as we've gone through.
Yeah.
So just a bit of a reminder really of up and coming webinars. We've got a webinar on alert on the 29th of November. So again, that's for you and your partner agency. So please feel free to send the link to our website to your partner agency so that we can go through how the duty to refer 213B and wider partners can refer into you as local authorities if somebody is homeless or threatened with homelessness. And now we've upgraded alert to include local connection referrals from one local authority to another. So we will show you how that works within Alert if you're not already using it. On the 4th of December, we're going to have an EHR and Atlas demo where we can show you our version of a register, a one-stop shop register for all of your registration needs: social housing, private rented sector, supported accommodation, floating support, garages, allotments, the list goes on. And Atlas, which is our version of a one-stop shop allocation process. So again, whether you use CBL, direct lets, or shortlists, you can do them all within Atlas. 19th of December, we'll be showing you our accommodation rent accounting module. It won't be ready until the end of the financial year, but we'll be able to show you some early slides, early screenshots of what the rent accounting module will cover. And again, on the 8th of January, we're going to look at a further Alert demo where we can show you any additional sprints that we've done on Alert since November. Just as a reminder, our sounding boards are in January, and that's where we give a policy update, an operational update, and in the afternoon we will be using it for our user forum. And what we're going to do as part of the user forum is have a reporting workshop. So if you do want to come along, they're free. If you do want to come along and want to know a little bit more about reports, or send someone else so they know a little bit more about reports, they're going to be on the 22nd and 23rd of January, the 29th, 30th and 31st around the country. We will get them uploaded onto our website so that you can see which is the closest one to you. And again, you book on in the normal way. As a reminder, Housing Jigsaw webinars are free for local authorities and their partners. So just book on in the normal way through the MPSS website.
So just a couple of things from me. The first one on the reporting workshops at the sounding boards. We'll expand on what we've covered today, but I'll show you some really cool stuff that you can do with the tool. So we'll look at some pivots and some nice graphs, and if we've got time, then we'll also look at dashboards as well. So you'll really see exactly what it can do for you. We've had a question as well around reporting on quarters. Yes, that's something you can definitely do, and you can also prompt for the quarter as well. I was just going to say, I hope that answers the question that was raised.
So we've come to the end of today's webinar. I hope you found it really useful. I've certainly learned a lot this afternoon, and I think a big thank you to Rich and to Dawn for showing us how the reports work and making it, hopefully, a very easy process for us all. Again, as a reminder, send us a chat very quickly on what you would like to see as the top 5 reports we put into Yerby 2 for you, or send us an email to housingjigsaw@mpssupport.org.uk. Remember to include the fields you want to see within that report, and we will then build the most popular top 5. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Bye.